How long does one man keep another man in a knot before it breaks him? Michael Chandler was teased by Conor McGregor for 2 years about a fight that would make or break his future, but McGregor kept putting it off. Chandler was at the top of his game, but McGregor kept making big claims and creating buzz without ever taking a step forward. Why did McGregor keep putting off the fight? Did McGregor only use Chandler as a piece in his game? Today we'll tell you all the ups and downs of McGregor's 2-year role as Chandler and the terrible damage it did to him. So let's begin. Chandler's career at a key point. Michael Chandler was nearing the end of his fighting days, but still at the top of his game. Just before he made the huge jump from Bellator to the UFC, he was already known as an exciting fighter who always put on exciting shows in the octagon. Every fight Chandler had, from his knockout win over Dan Hooker to his fight against Justin Gaethje, had become a must-see on TV. While all of these fights were exciting, Michael Chandler was most looking forward to his matchup with Conor McGregor, who is the biggest star in the UFC. This fight was getting a lot of attention. Pay-per-view sales were sure to be in the millions just because of McGregor's name, and Chandler knew it was the best chance to cement his reputation and make the most money of his career. But Chandler had to wait 2 long years before he could go into the cage for the fight of a lifetime. There was a lot of talk about the fight between McGregor and Chandler, but it never happened. Chandler's situation was not only annoying, but it also changed the course of his work. At age 38, a fighter has a small window of time for big chances. Chandler should have been making the most of this time by either going for a final title run or at least getting a bunch of big fights that paid well. But he did nothing and sat there while McGregor continued to party, put things off, and play Chandler for a fool. How did one of the biggest stars in the UFC let himself be dragged around for so long? Also, why did McGregor keep putting off this fight when Chandler's career was almost over? The bait of the Ultimate Fighter. In the year 2023, it looked like everything was set up for a huge fight. As part of season 31 of The Ultimate Fighter, the UFC said that Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler would be competing as coaches. Chandler saw this as more than just a chance to fight McGregor in the octagon. It was also a chance to be seen by a wide audience for weeks on end, which would make him more marketable and visible. The season was built around the expectation of their inevitable fight, with fans being told that Chandler vs. McGregor would be the end of the story. But even as the cameras were rolling, it was clear that McGregor wasn't fully committed. Chandler was a very disciplined athlete, and he took his job as an instructor very seriously. He planned each workout, made a plan, and stayed in great shape. McGregor, on the other hand, was rarely seen. When he did show up, it was more about his antics, throwing parties, making the contestants mad, and making fun of Chandler, than about getting ready for the show. Everyone looking could see how different the two fighters were. Chandler, a man with a lot to show, was holding on to the hope that this fight would happen. On the other hand, McGregor didn't seem to be paying attention to the fight at all. Even though these signs were very clear, Chandler kept waiting. He might have thought that McGregor's showmanship was just another way to get people to buy tickets. Or maybe he felt like he couldn't go back after spending so much time on it. While Chandler waited, the fight announcement never came, and McGregor's behaviors made people wonder more and more. Was this fight ever going to happen? The never-ending waits. One of the most annoying things about how McGregor handled the situation was how long things took. Fans and experts kept guessing when the fight might finally happen, but McGregor never showed up. Every time a possible date was brought up, McGregor found a way to make it happen later. Then the shocking news came out. McGregor wasn't even in the UFC's anti-doping program. For at least 6 months, he couldn't fight. The fact that Chandler found out about this made him even more angry. In his last fight, against Dustin Poirier, McGregor broke his leg badly, and rumors spread that he had used performance-enhancing drugs to help him get better. There was only one thing that could be certain. McGregor wasn't ready to fight, and Chandler's patience was wearing thin. Chandler, who was always positive, kept saying in public that he thought the fight would happen. In his story, he said that the UFC had told him from inside that McGregor was coming back. As the months went by, it became less likely that the fight would ever happen. The false hope of 2024. It looked like Chandler's wait had finally paid off by the beginning of 2024. McGregor was making noises about coming back, and he even set a date, June 29th. They were finally going to fight at UFC 303, and the fight was set to be a 170-pound battle. Chandler could almost taste winning, and the huge check that would come next would change his whole future. It looked like 2 years of waiting would pay off with one of the biggest events in MMA history. Fans were excited, and the media was talking. But bad luck hit again. As the fight date got closer, rumors spread that McGregor was injured. At first, not much was known, but it became clear quickly that McGregor had broken his toe. It was called off just weeks before the fight. Everything that he was looking forward to and exciting was gone in an instant. This was more than just a defeat for Chandler. He had spent almost 2 years getting ready for this fight, but once again, he came up empty. It was even worse that it wasn't clear when or if McGregor would be ready to fight. What does a fighter do when they've been held up for a long time and then left behind at the last second? How does Chandler get back on their feet after such a mental and social blow? The damage done and moving on. Chandler had no choice but to move on after the fight was called off. He was 38 years old now, and even though he was still physically fit, time was running out for him. Chandler finally had enough after waiting for almost 2 years. He needed to stop trying to get the McGregor money and get back to working on his job. Around the middle of 2024, Chandler said he was going to face someone else, a former champion named Charles Oliveira. Chandler saw it as a chance to show that he was still one of the best lightweight fighters in the UFC, even though the fight itself was tough. He could beat Oliveira. He would be back in the running for the title and might even be able to get a shot at the current king, Islam Makhachev. Still, there was one question that wouldn't go away. What had the last 2 years cost Chandler? Fighters need to keep moving, and Chandler's lack of movement for 2 years could lead to ring dust or, even worse, missed chances. The Game of McGregor. As Chandler thinks about his next role, the question that keeps coming up is, why did McGregor play him for so long? There's no doubt that McGregor can control the UFC and its fighters. Because of how big and crazy he is, McGregor knows how to get people's attention, even when he's not fighting. Some people think that McGregor didn't really want to fight Chandler and was just using him as a pawn to keep his name in the news without having to commit to a fight. Others think that McGregor really wanted to make a comeback, but his personal life, which was full of late-night parties, media scandals, and not following through with his plans, whatever McGregor did, it had real effects, and Chandler was the one who had to pay for them. Being away from the octagon, Conor McGregor has left a hole in UFC, but it has also given other fighters a chance to shine. Although Chandler has been caught in McGregor's web for 2 years, he has still managed to stay a fan favorite. Even if the fight with Conor McGregor doesn't happen, he is still a valuable asset to the UFC because of his powerful style and willingness to take on any task. What we understand. So what can we learn from Chandler and McGregor's 2-year connection? For one thing, it shows how random fight games are. Waiting for the right moment can sometimes cost you time and chances in a sport where timing is everything. It's admirable that Chandler stuck with the idea of facing McGregor, but looking back, it might have been a bad idea to wait so long for a fight that wasn't even a sure thing. The fact that stars like McGregor have so much power over the UFC is also clear. The fact that McGregor can delay, confuse, and eventually stop fights without getting in trouble. It shows how special he is in the sport. People who aren't as powerful as bigger names, like Chandler, are often at the hands of those bigger names and their whims. As Chandler moves on to his next task, the part of his career where he fought Conor McGregor will serve as a lesson for other fighters. In mixed martial arts, MMA, even the biggest promises can fall through. Sometimes, the only thing a fighter can count on is their own ability to change and move on. The way ahead. Michael Chandler's story isn't over yet. His next fight with Charles Oliveira could either make him want to win the title again or be the end for a boxer who has given everything to the sport. But Chandler's strength and drive will not change, no matter what happens. But Chandler has shown over and over that he can get back on track after a setback. The fight with McGregor may have been a missed chance. It's still not clear what will happen with McGregor in the UFC. He might never go back to the octagon. Or has the largest star in the sport moved on? Time will tell. But one thing is certain, McGregor's 2-year game of chicken with Michael Chandler will go down as one of the most frustrating stories in UFC history. For Chandler, this event taught him lessons that will guide his work for the rest of his life. Things moved quickly in the fight world. While McGregor played tricks, Chandler stayed focused. Now that everything has calmed down, will Chandler finally get out from under McGregor's shade and take back his place among the best fighters in the UFC? The story is still having a lot of turns as the future plays out. Watch out for the next part of this story. Please like, share, and subscribe to keep up with all the thrilling moments.